All right, Anthony, thanks again for the big pizza party today. I know I asked you earlier, but if you don't mind answering again, what inspired you to get, well, let's just be honest, over $500 worth of pizza for almost 200 people? So thanks. What inspired you to do that?
Well, again, it's more about giving back to the people and not forgetting where you come from. Because, a lot of people do forget where they come from. And, a lot of people don't even try to give back.
And I know that you've been associated with the Open Shelter for a while. How long have you been involved, and how long have you been coming to the Open Shelter?
It's been about 17 years.
And what led you to the Open Shelter? What were the reasons that you needed to use the Open Shelter or come to the Open Shelter?
Well, I came at a pretty early age. I was around 17 years old. And at that time, I was trying to be grown, trying to get my own place. And I actually had ran away from my aunt, and because she had custody of me. And somebody told me, he said, hey, go down to the Open Shelter. And I said, oh, well, I've never heard of it before. And they told me where it was. And at that time, it was out west, down on West State Street. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to go down there. And I came down there. I lied about my age. And I ended up staying there. Eventually, my aunt came down there looking for me. And the Children's Services came down there looking for me also. And so they found me and they took me back to my aunt. And one of the staff had explained to me I was too young to be there and that I had to be 18 years of age. And so I had to go back to where I came from. So when I turned 18, I came back down there. And the Open Shelter had helped me get housing.
And going back to your childhood, you mentioned you ran away from your aunt?
Yes.
Did you grow up in Columbus? Are you from Columbus?
Yes, born and raised. Columbus, Ohio. Originally from Sullivan Gardens from the west side.
Mm-hmm. And so you grew up all your life in Columbus. Did you need to answer that?
Yeah, I'm from Columbus.
You're from Columbus. What was it like growing up? What was your childhood like?
My childhood was abusive.
Really?
My mother was very abusive to me. I got taken away, went to Children's Services. I've been to every group home here in Columbus, and a few places out of Columbus.
What places out of Columbus?
Out of Columbus, it was United Care Center.
Okay. Where was that located?
In Ironton, Ohio.
Oh, wow.
So they put me there because I was considered a high-risk runaway. So I used to run away from everywhere they put me.
So you were in and out of, in and out of different facilities?
Yes. A lot of facilities here was like Buckeye Boys Ranch.
Right.
United Methodist Children's Home. Franklin Village at the time off of Gantz Road. United Children's Home. United Methodist Children's Home up in Worthington, Ohio. Also was the Ohio Center.
So you're bouncing around from all these places, and I would imagine, are you bouncing around from a lot of different foster homes?
Yes, they put me in a foster home one time, and I actually ran from there also. And so when they did that, then they said, oh, well, he's a high-risk flyer.
Right.
And so they put me in, it was Ohio Center, and that was in Ironton, Ohio, where I couldn't run. And
why couldn't you run? Just because you were isolated?
It was too far. I
Too
didn't
far.
know my way around Ironton, Ohio.
Okay. Put
It
you
wasn't-
somewhere.
Yeah, put me somewhere where I couldn't run it,
Right.
where I didn't know the area.
So what was it like bouncing around from place to place? I mean, that had to have been hard as a child, bouncing around.
Eventually I got used to it. After so many years of being in the group homes, so I got pretty accustomed to it.
When you were growing up, as far as like school, were there certain things you were looking to, as far as when you were an adult, things you wanted to be? Any dreams as you were a kid?
Yeah, as a kid, I always wanted to become a basketball player, and a chef. I thought about being a chef. And, my grades was good in school. And, but I had to leave the 12th grade because of living issues. Children's Services had released me at age 18, so I really didn't have nowhere to live or stay.
Right.
So that's when I found my way back down at the open shelter.
Now, you mentioned you ran away and you lied about your age. You ran away from your aunt.
Yeah.
What was the reason for that?
It's because of abuse. She used to abuse me.
Physically or verbally? Or?
Physically. As my mother used to. But my mother, she was on drugs and alcohol at that time, so, it was kind of real hard for me, and I tried to get my mother help. And let the worker know that, I really didn't want to be taken away from my mother because I loved my mother, but my mother needed help. But when it became more abusive, then that's when they physically took me away.
As far as you mentioned your mother, drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, my mother was on drugs and alcohol real bad. My father, I never had my father there for me. He was also in jail, in prison, on drugs and alcohol. Also, so, I really wasn't raised too much around my family.
Right.
I was mostly raised around Children's Services.
How about yourself? Did you become involved in drugs and alcohol yourself?
Thank God I never did.
Okay.
I tried some,
Right.
but I've never been addicted to it. And I thank God for that. It wasn't nothing but the grace of God that kept me.
Now, you mentioned you ran from your aunt and ended up at the open shelter. What was that like, the first time going into the open shelter at that time, at a young age?
Well, I was kind of a little bit nervous because, when you go in places you don't know, or you have not been, I was a little kind of nervous, but I learned how to adapt to it because certain people that I knew when I was young, growing up, so it kind of made it a little bit more easier for me.
Kind of knew what you were going into. But then they brought you back home, and then you mentioned you returned to the open shelter. And what was that? What was the reason for that again? Why did you come back?
That was because at the time I was in the 12th grade with 3 credits left. And when Children's Services released me, they released me from my aunt because I had turned 18. Then I was on probation still. So I really didn't have nowhere to go. Cause
Your probation for...
I was on probation because back then I was still considered a juvenile still.
Right.
And so I was on probation then for some things I messed up on as a child.
Would you want to share why?
It was
What the reasons were?
It's for carrying a concealed weapon.
Really?
Yeah, carrying a gun.
What led to that? Why were you carrying a gun?
That, because not me being naughty and running the streets and, taking care of my own self because I didn't have nobody there really to take care of me, except my grandpa. My grandpa did help out. He did step in when my father could not be there, and he did help me. while I was going through the group homes and stuff. But when I became of age, he still helped me.
Right.
But still, I had to learn how to take care of myself.
Now, you mentioned you've been pretty much associated off and on with the Open Shelter for 17 years. Now, during that time, I would imagine you found yourself outside a few times. What was
Yes.
that like, being outside, living on the land?
Yes, well, I was just this type of person, that I couldn't help nobody but myself, and if I couldn't help myself, then what was I gonna do? So I had to do things that I didn't want to do. Was instant sleeping outside on the streets, but I was always a survivor, so I knew how to do it. It was me getting out there doing it.
Right.
And so I found myself, getting outside, sleeping, waking up every morning, praying, asking God what's next, trying to find housing, and working with the housing coordinators in them. So, it was a hard life for me.
Now, being outside, I imagine it's rough being outside, but did you run into any issues like with violence or people trying to take advantage of you?
No, because, I knew how to carry myself when I was in the streets. And so I was one of the ones that I didn't tolerate a lot of stuff. And, and I was one of the ones that I slept by myself, not around a whole lot of people, because I wanted peace.
Right.
And, a couple times, I ran into people, might have had an altercation here and there. But for the most part, I can say that most of the time I stayed to myself and stayed by myself.
And coming to the Open Shelter, for, as you mentioned, you've been involved, you've been associated with us for about 17 years. How has the Open Shelter helped you through the different steps of your life?
Well, they have helped me, step by step. The first step, they taught me that, for one, I had to learn how to first step out and take care of myself first before anybody else could help me. That, that they wasn't going to do everything for you.
Right.
And, not to expect that, because some people do expect for people to do everything for you. That was the first thing they taught me. Second thing they taught me was to, they give me the sources and the resources, but I have to go out and get them. And so, I had to get out on my own. I couldn't always, ask them to go out there with me, but I had to learn. I had to get out on my own self, and I had to get out there and do it. And I really like to give a special thanks to Bishop Jerry Pierce, because he was a man that didn't really know me much, but he was in the group home. Also, in Another Chance on Cleveland and Weber is where I first met him, going through the group homes. And, he really inspired me, took me under his wing when he worked for the Open Shelter, and he taught me a whole lot about, being out on the streets, what I can do, what I should do, what I shouldn't do.
Right.
And so he was a pretty help to me. And, and I really thank God for, the people that I worked with the Open Shelter, because they have really truly been a blessing unto me.
Now, as far as your basic needs too, coming to the Open Shelter for that.
And they have helped me out with my basic needs. Might not been what I wanted, but, I got what I needed.
As far as
the housing goes, it's been some days I had to sleep inside the Open Shelter. Showers, they helped me when I needed to take showers, fed me when I was hungry, Your most successful needs, they met all the needs for me.
So what's going on with you right now? What are your goals? What are some of the things you're going through now? Some of the things you are striving for right now?
Well, right now I was married about a year ago, and I had lost everything within 1 year.
Really? Because of the marriage?
Because of the marriage. I lost my new car. I had a new car, 2021 Kia Forte. That got totaled right after I got a divorce. A lady hit me and totaled it.
Oh.
So then I had got another car, 2011. It was a Toyota Avalon. And so, I was working for Donato's.
Right.
Which I was working for them for about 5 years. And I was sleeping in my car. And, I was like, where do I go from here? What do I do? All I could think about was the open shelter. And, I eventually just came back to the open shelter. And I was like, I need help. They gave me help. They told me who to call, who to go to. And so I did that. And right now, I'm on a housing list right now.
Okay.
And the reason why I had to stop working is because of my feet. I have ulcers.
What's it with your feet?
I have ulcers on my feet, which is from diabetes.
Oh.
From being diabetic. So I'm not working right now. I did file for my Social Security in August of last year. So, since then, I've been staying over my pastor's house. And her name is May White. And so I've been with her for about 8 years now.
Really?
And so I'm a pastor myself.
Well, I was going to ask about that. You mentioned that earlier, that you, as far as being a pastor, and you're looking to become, and I apologize, I don't remember the term. Bishop. So what's the process there? What's going on there?
The process there, I just ordered my bishop robe, my bishop hat, also ordered my clergy stuff. And so I got to do my trial sermon, and then I'm going to get taken up as a bishop.
And this is for, and I apologize for asking, but just for those who may see this, so they know, for what church?
Divine Destiny 2 Christian Center.
Okay.
But I'm going to be starting my own church. I already have my church name.
Really?
And everything, so I'm going to be branching out.
Do you want to share the name, or you don't want to?
New International Glory Center.
Oh, great. Well, let me ask you this. If someone were to come to you and were thinking of supporting the Open Shelter, or even needed to turn to the Open Shelter for help, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that it is well worth it, and that, they can really help you, but you have to do the footwork. Because a lot of people think that when you send them somewhere, that they don't have to do nothing.
Right.
But they have to do the footwork. They will give you the resources, but you have to do the footwork behind the resources.
And let me also ask you this. You mentioned about being a pastor, looking to become a bishop. Are there any other goals? Any other things you're looking to aim for in the future?
I was thinking about going back to school, becoming a chef. I really was. As long as my feet allow me to do it, yes, I will be going back to school.